When it comes to losing a game of Magic the Gathering, it's not that deep. At the end of the day, it's a children's card game, but context does matter. And it's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. There's a tweet going around regarding the disqualification of a player during round 2 of RC Dallas, and it's gotten the Magic Twitter sphere ablaze. A lot of folks are talking about this from a ruling perspective and also the outcome of it. Why this player was disqualified, the judge ruling around it, and I wanted to bring this up not to become a drama YouTuber. I'm telling you, if you comment down below that I'm a drama YouTuber, I'm not going to ban you. You're allowed to have your opinion, but I promise you, I'm not. I wanted to provide commentary on this that I think is relevant as an outcome. I think a lot of people are very black and white about this situation, but it's not. It's truly not a black and white situation. I think there's too much of you're either this or that. Okay, without understanding the whole context. So let's go through it. Let's walk through it. I want to summarize it and then go into the reactions. So this is the document itself, and I will not be reading it. Okay, I have it here. If you wanted to read it, I'm going to slowly scroll through. I'm going to provide a summary. That way, if it gets removed, this is an eternal documented proof of what this should be. So there you go. It's there. The summary of this, and we're going to kind of back up here, is this tweet by Stanley 2099. It says, I am the player who was DQ'd from the RC yesterday. This is my story. If you think you know everything that happened, you don't. It's not a short. I laid my heart out on the page. Please consider giving it a read. I think what's going on here is that, look, the summary is that Stanley was playing a game against another individual, right? Nicole, I believe the name was, and the match itself was going perfectly fine. These two had no harm between each other. And what ended up happening was in round 3, there was a situation with mana flooding, right? It was just like, you know, the opposing player from Stanley wasn't drawing any lands, right? And so what happened was Stanley was about to win this match, and this would have qualified him for the Pro Tour, a dream that many Magic the Gathering players have had for a very long time. Honestly, one that I used to have as well. Now, as a content creator, I feel my enjoyment of the game other ways. Now, Stanley and the opponent had this whole situation where the opponent says, "Hey, I'm about to lose anyway, but let me look at the top of my deck. If it's a land, I'll concede. If it's I'll just concede anyway, right? Or sorry, if it's not a land, I'll concede anyway." And so in a flurry of emotions, Stanley said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead, do it. No, who's gonna care anyway?" Stanley ends up winning the game, and they have a lovely conversation after, but then shortly a judge sits down with them and says, "Do y'all know what you did wrong?" Right? Just this kind of weird like parenting thing. I don't know. I guess look, I'm not going to comment on people's skills. Whatever. The judge said whatever, right? Because this is all just broken telephone, to be fair. So at that point, long story short, it ended up being that because of the decision that was made, that was obviously not a legal decision as per the game rules. You can't just be looking at the top of your deck without like surveil lands or scrying. That's friggin' weird. You can't do that. The judges ultimately decided after, some emotional responses, some pleading, it ended up in a match loss for both of them, which is insane. But after all of that, with Stanley's now hopes of being on the Pro Tour now dashed with this match loss, he stormed out, had a lot of frustration. There was a whole point where he slammed his fist on the table in frustration and says this is absurd and this isn't fair. And so ultimately with his behavior, because of that, he comes back into the hall after collecting himself, and he was kind of disqualified completely, right? He was taken out and everything. So there's a lot of emotions behind it. There was some aggressive behavior. There was some emotions around it. There's some weird judge ruling, and that's kind of what I want to bring up today. What is the ultimate conclusion, or what can we take away from this situation where someone wanted to qualify for the Pro Tour? They made an honest mistake. The judges made, honestly, an insane call, in my opinion. I'm just going to be straight up. But also there was behavior that honestly just wasn't something that was correct either. We are human at the end of the day, but it doesn't exclude you from being professional and acting in a way that is in of accordance to being a Pro Tour qualifier, right? So let's break it down from the top. I mean, look at the tweet itself. 177 comment, 261 retweet, like 1K like this thing. This thing's insane, right? It's notifications are going off the wazoo. So let's start off with this, right? I'm going to start off from the male perspective here because I think this is going to matter. Cedric Phillips said, right, as a cis male myself, right? I think there's a big thing to take in here. I too have been given the wrong ruling at an event. I cared very much about it in the early stages of my Magic career. I too lost my law after it happened and was asked to leave the venue. I was later told the ruling was poor adjudication of the rules, which did nothing to make me feel better. And how true this story is doesn't really matter to me. How it's very easy to tell someone to behave in a certain way as a third party. To do so shows a lack of empathy. Some real just comply and there won't be a problem vibes by people here. And I think there is a level of truth here. There is a level of truth here, right? You are allowed to react the way you did. I think honestly, being upset is fair. It is an upsetting situation. How you act by being upset, that's another problem. You are fair to be upset. If I was in this situation, I would be upset. I would be angry. But I would do my best and I would hope that I would portray those emotions in an acceptable way. I think the we are human thing only goes so far. Again, the slamming the fist on the table, the over emotional react. See, and that's kind of a picky thing too, because you're allowed to show his lines. You're allowed to be upset, cry, or have tears, or have anger on your face. Like, these are fine, right? The banging your fist on the table, being aggressive, and the body language, and these are things that some of these things I'm assuming because of the context of the wording being provided. Again, this document is going to be linked down below. That's inappropriate. Just straight up, that's inappropriate. And the reason I bring up that, I wanted to bring up the male perspective here is in a second, we're going to go over the fact that a lot of the comments on a lot of these sections tend to be the fact that males are saying this is okay and the females are kind of saying this is not okay. I'm not on the male side here. I just, you know what? As I've grown up, as I've matured, and I still have to work on these. I have a lot of, things that I work through with how I express my anger. This is something I work through with my interpersonal relationships, in my vocation, in content creation. These are things that we all have to work on a daily basis. No one is perfect, but it doesn't mean that it's appropriate. And I think at Hovermere brings it, just I can't help but notice that people going through it's understandable. I get it's mad sometimes. You can't expect people to be perfect. Are men and people that saying, I don't think conspicuous displays of violence are acceptable are women. And so I think I think like there's a lot of, okay, I don't want to get into the whole like, men are trash type of thing here. That's not, look, those are the type of conversations where I tell people to pick the bear and move on, go see therapy. Okay. But like, I do agree that there is a level of aggression here that is inappropriate. Right. And as people, we should work better to be better, right? And I think this person is right. Honestly, there is a good amount of people that are male and are saying that this type of behavior is okay. And I think the feeling is okay. How you express that feeling is inappropriate. You should not be aggressive. And I think the disqualification based on behavior is, at the end of the day, I think that's appropriate. If you're DQ'd based on your behavior, if you're disqualified from the RC based on your behavior, your aggressive behavior, and how you're presenting yourself, that's appropriate. That's not something that as a Pro Tour qualifier, I think Magic the Gathering wants to portray as a company. They want cool, collected, calm folks, and emotions are allowed, but we don't need that type of press here, right? And so just based off of that, I think that's fine. But you're allowed to be angry. And I know that doesn't make it better. You reacted in the moment and you reap the consequences of what happened from there. And that's kind of my take on the situation that happened in person. And I think, right here in the tank, MTG says, I think every person who has goals of being competitive Magic has had a bad experience and overreacted. It's an emotional investment on every human being with emotions. However, you cannot use uncontrollable emotions after saying, I do not regret my actions. That was said in the document, by the way. One of the initial paragraphs literally said, I do not regret my actions. Ooh, okay. Okay. And then there's this whole thing where like Max Torsion was, I don't know, something about advocating. The tweet was really weird from this person. Advocating for violence. I guess they're saying they're not advocating for violence. I don't know what's going on. And then, the thing tweet below. So I think Jesse's tweet has good context here in the sense that when it comes to, there's a lot of valuable lessons to be learned here in terms of your interpersonal interactions, playing the game of Magic, having frustrations, and your own relationship to the game. There's a lot of maturing that a lot of us have to do. The whole idea of folks have talked about how, they have folks at EDH night that scream at them, they yell at them, that have hissy fits, and, because of a lack of control that they have. These are interpersonal things that you need to work on through therapy. There are trained professionals that are here to help you work through these things. You clearly have issues that are going on in the rest of your life that you seem to be having a lot of trouble with, right? And so that's what that's about. But I do say that the original choice of this situation being a match loss is insane. That's insane. I will preface this. Let me preface this. It seems like I'm going on a witch hunt to judges. Judges have a very hard job when it comes to Magic the Gathering and TCGs in general. A lot of these judges go unpaid or unrecognized. Their time isn't valued, and they aren't given a lot of time the proper resources to manage events like this. In this situation, I imagine there was resourcing, there was compensation, but even still, it may not be felt as fair to what they should have been provided. Judges should be appreciated more. I'm not advocating for a witch hunt against judges. This ruling, however, is garbage. I think that this last sentence here by Jesse is context should always have more sway on rules enforcement because individual circumstances are widely and hard set are very widely, and hard set rules are invariably going to lead to this sort of thing. I don't believe in slippery slope arguments. Okay. So it's okay. The whole slippery slope argument of, if we let this person go, then the next person stop. Just context by context. This was a harmless thing. In the document, the judge literally says they overheard the conversation. And so this should have gone on, in my opinion, with the warning. This should have just been a warning. Why we gave someone a match loss, especially based on the situation that they were in, where they were like, this person, if they won the game, they would have been PT qualified. And handing them a match loss, look, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be giving match losses to people that if they did something completely wrong and they're qualifying to the PT, we just like, no. This situation specifically should have been a warning. Giving a match loss is completely inappropriate, and the judge, in my opinion, mine, I'm not saying this is objective, in my opinion, the judges were incorrect. Every single judge that judged the fact that this was a match loss is severely incorrect. And this is an inappropriate use of rules enforcement to manage the rules. Inappropriate. But objectively, I guess the ruling is correct. The problem is, it's not about being objective. That's not the point of rules enforcement in a children's card game. The rules enforcement is to maintain competitive integrity. Competitive integrity would have been maintained with the match loss if you heard as a judge the match and you understood the context of how this was won, and then you took in the conversations of these folks pleading and how they had, in my opinion, based on what was said, no bad intention, and you still ruled this a match loss. You're incorrect. You were wrong. That was a wrong take. And you know what? I'm not asking the names of the judge. I don't want you to be harmed or told after. I'm just saying it's wrong. Okay? That is my take on the situation. I think the judges, they made the call based on the situation. I think it's wrong, but ultimately the rules were enforced. I just think that they could have also been enforced with a better outcome. Now that outcome led to someone making a series of bad decisions, in my opinion. And now there's a lot of back and forth about it on the internet. And I think just a lesson that I want to pass on to all of you listening right now is that when it comes to your personal relationship with the game of Magic the Gathering, you should really evaluate that when you have a lot of emotional investment, when losing a game, when winning a game, when tying, when missing an event, going to an event, whatever it might be, has a lot of emotional effect on you. Winning, fine. Joining the gathering, fine. Like there's a lot of parts about the game that you should be positive about. But negative emotions are a problem. There are countless studies out there. Countless. Go look it up. I don't need to prove my point. Go look it up. That negative emotions are a net negative on you physically, psychologically, and just everything to do with your life, negative emotions will not be good for you. So if you are feeling negative emotions with this game, if you in high pressure situations and situations like this, you need to go evaluate your own personal emotions and your own self outside of the game first. Your priority is not Magic the Gathering. Your priority is your self well-being. You need to look out for yourself and your close circle, your family, friends, your inner circle around you. You need to look after that first before you go out into a card game like this, into a game, into any hobby, and have these emotions be burst out and create negative environments and negative situations on things like this. You are allowed to feel the way you feel, but once you start acting on them in ways like this, again, a lot of negative things can happen. And I think that's what ended up happening here. There's a lot of bad to be taken out of this. There's a lot of good to be taken out as well. And I apologize if I have misspoken in any way, if I have offended anyone in any way, in terms of the tweets that I showed out, or if I've offended any group. That wasn't my intention. My intention was just to have this kind of final conclusion and highlight the point here. I do in no mean any harm to this person who expressed this opinion, the judges, the organization, or anything. Just kind of highlighting the fact that this could happen to you as a player, and you need to be really careful. You need to evaluate the reactions you have and how they have consequences, especially for someone like myself as a content creator. I do have a lot of negative emotions. Heck, there's a video coming out later this week about how much I hate Thoughtseize, but that's fair, right? These are fair emotions. I'm not going to go out and rip up cards of Thoughtseize. If I play against someone playing Thoughtseize, I'm not going to rip it up and I'm not going to harm them. I'm allowed to express my opinion and my emotion, but if it's in any way going to negatively impact someone's life forever, I think I hope many of you would evaluate what that opinion is and how you go to express that.